one of the key things I want to focus on next year is sleep.
Welcome to this side of the fence.
Few times going out, I had a choice whether, I want to change all my habits or just throw this device out.
By the way, you're a true biohacker now.
We were talking about some private market, we were talking about some returns and equations and this and some, and suddenly you start talking about sleep. But I think the more you realize the relevance and importance of each of these things in your life, you become a little bit more careful about it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Biohackers Club. Today's episode is part of the series Biohackers in the Boardroom, with the intention to engage with high performers in high stress environments and recognize how they prioritize health. Today's episode is not just insightful, but also very, very relevant as we speak with Mr. Sandeep Sinha, who's the founder and managing partner of Lumis Partners, as he walks us through the importance of sleep and how he prioritizes sleep in this high stress environment. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi Sandeep, welcome to the Biohackers Club.
Thank you, Tanya. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. We are at the end of 2024, and I thought there's nobody better than you for me to conduct the last episode of this year. This series is called Biohackers in the Boardroom, and hence, I think you're the best fit for this. Sandeep, I know you've been an investor for over 15 years, and last couple of years, you've been really hands-on in entrepreneurial shoes. What are the stress levels like?
That's an interesting one. Entrepreneurship is a very different ball game. I think
Absolutely.
Most people just talk about the multi-million-dollar exits. They talk about the unicorns, the fancy headlines on Economic Times or Mint and so on. But I don't think most people have a real sense of the grind that goes behind the scene, right? So whether that was as an investor or as an entrepreneur, I always feel that you have to really, really love pain to be able to decide to be an entrepreneur. Right?
That's a great way of putting it.
So, if somebody has to motivate you for being an entrepreneur or somebody has to lure you into it, then you're in the wrong business, right? So it actually genuinely needs a very different way of life. And the thing is that once you are used to of this kind of chaos, then it's very difficult to go back to the regular life. So you almost become like a part of this altogether.
Absolutely agreed.
And when you do that, the boundaries blur between the personal responsibilities, the professional responsibilities, the aspirations that you have as an individual. So it all becomes like a haze and a mixed thing. And before you realize, your concept of fun changes. Spending 16 hours a day becomes a great way to live the life.
True.
And obviously, the stress level goes high. Your life changes, right? So one has to get used to of approaching it in a very different way. It's also sometimes very lonely to be at the top as an entrepreneur because you got to carry a large part of this burden yourself. So it's an interesting ride. I wouldn't trade it for anyone, but needless to say, the stress levels and everything else goes along with it.
Great. I love the line that you have to love pain to be an entrepreneur. Absolutely agreed. Now, in all of this, and like you said, this chaos, does health rank anywhere in the list of priorities?
I think it varies from individual to individual, but I can say it at least for myself. Health ranks very, very high on priority. Right?
Superb.
It's a very important aspect. I don't think I need anybody to explain me how critical or an essential part of life that is. But I think it's the challenge is a little bigger than that because it's not about intellectual appreciation. It's not about realizing it. It's actually about how do you mindfully put basic things in place so that you can do justice to it. So I think in terms of my own internalization of the priority of health, absolutely 10 on 10. In terms of my actual ability to do justice to it on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to give that score to you right now. I don't think it's going to be a great score.
No, but that's fair. I think if it's, even intellectually or theoretically at a 10 on 10, that's a great way to look at it because in my opinion, seldom do I see people who kind of rate it 10 on 10.
Right.
So that's great. I'm not going to dig in past what's the implementation.
Basics, at least the basics are in place.
Absolutely. That's a good starting point. So entering into 2025, anything specific, any goals, any kind of priorities or key focus areas that you have in mind?
It's very interesting you asked that question because a lot of people have this fancy wish list. This is what they want for the new year. These are the resolutions and so on.
Absolutely.
I actually have something which is very simple. I just one of the key things I want to focus on next year is sleep.
Really?
Yeah, and then
That's a pleasant surprise.
yeah, and I think it just sounds strange to me as well. But you know, I begin to realize that in spite of understanding how critical sleep is to our daily life, uh, how unknowingly we have compromised it over, I won't even say years, but I would say over decades. Right.
Absolutely.
And the challenge is that, you know, I have always been very carefree, or I would rather use it careless about the whole concept of sleep. So what that means is that I would catch a nap while, in the car from point A to point B. I would probably get some nap on the flight early morning, try and do the same day, morning, evening from Delhi to Bombay and
Wow.
things like that. So never actually thought about that there is also the concept called the quality of sleep, right?
Right.
And it's interesting because the more you read about it, the more you realize how critical that piece is. The more you want to give it focus, and surprisingly enough, the more you fuss about it, the more difficult it gets to get a good quality sleep. So it's like some kind of a catch-22 situation. But yeah, that's something that I really, really want to put my focus and energy on.
And this is an absolute pleasant surprise, and so happy to hear this. Sandeep, I'm actually very type A about sleep. So, really glad to see somebody's talking about the quality of sleep. And you're right. The more fussy we get about it, somehow it becomes a lot more harder for us to get quality sleep. I don't know why that
The more you chase it, the more difficult it gets. And I actually got this band to kind of start to track and monitor my sleep.
Super.
And it's just so strange. I mean, they're just simple things that you do, and that consciously in your mind, that by these small activities, it impacts your sleep. Like maybe just having a single drink,
Right.
how bad it affects your sleep. So
Right.
at the end of like a couple of days, or few times going out, I had a choice whether I want to change all my habits or just throw this device out because it was further stressing you out to say, what, this is quite miserable. But thankfully, keeping my resolution in mind, I'm still holding on to this and trying to make those small changes, which hopefully would go a long way, right? And I used to laugh looking at other people when they would talk something like this. Oh, what the hell is wrong with you? You got to be a little bit more strong. You got to be a little bit more resilient. What the hell is this that you're being so fussy about your sleep? But I guess it's a realization that I have that is not something to be taken lightly. It is something that you need to put an explicit focus on and ready to prioritize it, because unless you prioritize it, there's always something more pressing,
Absolutely.
something more important, whether it's a work commitment, social commitment, responding to a late night email, getting onto a call at had somebody some explosive that have gone out in on the US side. So it is a genuine effort to prioritize something as simple as sleep. But you know what, I'm actually trying to very, very committed in terms of solving it.
I'm glad you didn't throw the band out. And by the way, you're a true biohacker now. Because, I say this often that the biohacker's mantra is what gets measured gets managed. The moment you have like a quantified, tangible bioparameter in front of you, I know it can be really, really stressful. But, you actually want to go back to one example that you shared. Something as small as a single drink before going to bed can really throw your sleep cycle off.
Right.
We don't realize that there are just the small little habits that can impact sleep so much.
Oh, yeah.
So, about the how. Now that you're prioritizing sleep in 2025, are there specifics that you're planning to do differently or specific protocols that you have in mind?
I think most of these things are that I've always known. So it's not like this is a news, but just making sure that there's enough water intake in the day, right? That when you're sleeping, the room is actually dark,
Right.
and you're not sleeping off when the TV is blaring loud, right? Ensuring that the room is actually quiet, right? Some simple supplements like magnesium and zinc. Try to make sure that at least those are balanced.
Super.
So I think it's not a rocket science, honestly, but when you start understanding, okay, what is deep sleep, what is REM sleep, and what is the number of disturbances you got in the night and all that kind of stuff. So you actually become a little bit more conscious.
True.
And you become a little bit more careful. So something as sleep as consistent sleep and awake timing, right? It's not like one day you are sleeping at whatever 10, 10:30, the next day you're awake till like 2 a.m. in the night, and that throws away the whole system. Spending time in sunlight, right? I mean, just getting your circadian rhythm in order. So,
My favorite word.
but I mean, it's genuinely very difficult for someone who has taken sleep as a granted thing all your life.
Right.
Somebody who doesn't believe in kind of being a little bit more tough about it and being a little bit more resilient, the grit and all that kind of stuff you talked about, and then you're saying no, 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 it's 10:30 in the night, I gotta go sleep. So some of these things are actually a lifestyle change.
Right.
But I'm also trying to balance. I mean, at least if I can get 5 days out of 7 in good shape, then 2 days are okay to compromise. So
That's fair. I think it's always an 80-20 rule. Like if you can kind of just get the 80% right, 20%
Right,
is
right,
life.
right.
But welcome to the side of the fence, because that's how it feels like to be biohacking and almost be type A about
yeah, and anyway,
everything.
it's very strange because in the middle of the conversation, I'm suddenly shifting to sleep, and like everybody, like, what the hell is wrong with you? We were talking about some private market, we were talking about some returns and equations and this that, and suddenly you start talking about sleep. But I think the more you realize the relevance and importance of each of these things in your life, you become a little bit more careful about it. And I think that's about it. I think that's about getting some discipline, getting some of the basic habits in order, being much more mindful about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I haven't gone to the meditation and all other stuff as of yet, but I think that's, I can see the relevance of a lot of those things, just simple breathing and how it impacts your HRV. And I was like completely blown away when somebody said, okay, now you can measure what breathing does to you. And I actually saw the HRV readings go from like 40 to like 110.
By just doing a little
But
bit
just doing 1 minute of breathing,
fantastic.
1 minute of breathing exercise dramatically alters. I mean, like you have an Apple Watch, I've never used that to measure any of these stuff, but
Right.
just 1 minute of a simple breathing exercise shoots it from like 40, 45 HRV to like 110, 150. So that's, at least for me, that's now a tangible way to assess what this means. And I think hopefully that should make a difference.
No, this is great. You're talking about all of the foundational bioparameters. I'm so glad that these are things you're quantifying and working towards. And circadian rhythm, like I said, my favorite term that you referred to. There's a joke about talking about being type A with sleep that 8 o'clock sharp, I switch off all of the lights, turn on red lights in the house, and it's a joke in the family. But you've got to do what you've got to do when you start quantifying bioparameters.
I don't think I can take that much liberty at my home, but yeah, I mean, I'm working towards it.
No, I'm glad. Again, like I said, I'm glad you didn't throw that out, and I'm glad that you're working, and focusing on 80%, 20%. You spoke about how it's sort of difficult coming from a mindset where it's about hustling and resilience and grit to saying, hey, listen, it's 10:30, and I've got to start sleeping. In this world, this hustle culture that we live in, there is a popular quote where we say, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." How would you respond to that today?
So far, I would like to choose to be sleeping when I'm alive, I think. And, it's unfortunate that you hear so many news these days in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. You hear about the stress. You hear about the impact of what that stress does to
Right.
everybody's life. And I think when the time commitment is actually not that high, I think it's more about discipline. It's more about consistency. And I'm realizing that it's not something that you can trade off
Right.
and say that, I'm probably not going to do it for like a month and then I'll probably take 3 days of holidays and I'm going to get everything together.
And then just kind of,
That's not going to happen.
absolutely.
So I think it's about making those smaller changes along the way.
True.
Keeping an eye on it, and then good or bad, having some level of measurability to it makes the world of a difference. At least for somebody like me, who always believes that you can't improve if you don't measure, or you don't have no control on that.
Absolutely.
But hopefully now that I'm seeing that by making those small adjustments, how things are improving, that's actually also gratifying in some sense, saying, okay, these are controllable things, right? So that's what I'm going to be after. So may sound very funny, but yeah, the sleep is a priority for next year.
No, this is fantastic, and I think a great way to enter 2025 for you and me both. I'm also going to put sleep on the list of priority. But this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this, Sandeep.
Lovely to have this conversation. All the best. I'm sure you guys are doing something phenomenal, so keep us posted.
Thank you so much.
All right.